and welcome to my podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts with me, Steve Penny. Over the coming weeks, I'm going to be talking to some great people. I hope you enjoy listening in. Thank you. Okay. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for coming in to talk to me today.
Hi, Steve. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Just really as a way of an introduction, if you just want to talk a little bit about who you are and what you do and why you do it, that would be good. If you wouldn't mind starting off.
Absolutely. Paul Haggath, H-A-G-G-A-T-H, nobody ever spells it correctly. I get Hogarth and all sorts of things, but Paul Haggath is the name. Started my own project management consultancy 6 years ago, now Team Projects. Coming from a background of project management, and before that civil engineering. I'm a qualified civil engineer. And I kind of got to the point where I thought, if I don't do it now, I never will. So I set up my own consultancy. Never looked back, really. I'm sure we'll touch on a lot of the pitfalls and the
running your own business,
triumphs and tribulations as we go through. But no, thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been a civil engineer before you started being a project manager. Where did you do your training to be a civil engineer?
I did my training with Cleveland County Council. I was not an apprentice. What do we call them those days?
I know what you mean.
An intern, a sponsorship.
Yeah.
That long ago, I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
So I got a sponsorship with the local authority.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, my parents were really chuffed and said, "Oh, that's it, you got a job for life." And I thought, "Oh, hope not."
Yes.
But that was great grounding, fantastic grounding.
Yeah.
And lots
of exciting times, I guess.
Well, it's like exciting times then, but lots of exciting times since. It was a really good grounding for engineering. Got me into engineering and taught me what I was good at and what I wasn't, and what I wasn't good at was engineering.
Which is a bit of a drawback if you're an engineer.
I say that a little bit facetiously, but
it wasn't what you enjoyed as much. You found.
No, look, I enjoyed it, but moving from civil engineering to project management was a kind of natural evolution into what I really enjoyed doing, which is solving problems and working with people and the bigger picture stuff.
So just sort of going back to the start of that, though, when you ended up going to Cleveland Council and were on like a sponsored indentureship or whatever you call it, apprenticeship type thing, why did you go that route in the first place? What actually sort of triggered the idea of being a civil engineer or being an engineer of some kind?
I guess, have I gone back far enough to... there's another question there. Maybe should I ask a different question? Would I do it again?
Yeah.
So I went into engineering because that was the natural progression, because I was good at technical drawing and metal work, and that's certainly not the reason to go into engineering. But back then, 35 years ago, that was what you did. That was a natural progression.
Yeah. Okay.
Would I do the same thing again? Possibly not.
Possibly. I think you have a lot more choices nowadays than you would have had back then. To be honest, you seem to get sort of pigeonholed fairly early on in your school life as to what you're going to be when you leave school.
Oh, absolutely. The careers master back then had a pamphlet. It wasn't even a book. I think you had about 4 pages of it.
4 or 5 options.
You join the military, become an engineer or something else. Yeah. But I got into engineering. I don't regret it for 1 minute. It's taken me on a great journey and got me where I am now. But would I do that again if I'd had my time again? I'm not sure.
Probably, yeah. I mean, that's always a difficult question, isn't it? Because you look at those decisions you make in your early years, and everything that follows comes because of those decisions. So if you change one of those decisions, would you end up being the person you are? Probably not.
And that's a day-by-day thing, isn't it? Even now, you make 1,000 decisions every single day, and every one of those could take you a different
route.
Yeah, if you called me up on a different day, I might have said, "No, I'm not coming to talk to you." And you might have had somebody interesting. You might have had somebody interesting instead.
Well, I think that's one thing I've certainly found recently in particular, is that people do have some very interesting stories once you start to pull away at the outer layers of the persona that they show the world. And I think some of those stories are actually worth sharing because they can be quite inspirational for other people. And, just show that there's a lot more to somebody than what you see on the surface is something that can make a difference, I think. But,
absolutely. I think we've all got our game face, our work face and our home face, and
absolutely.
The two don't need to be exclusive. But
no. And I think the other thing I've found is that there's always all this talk about a work-life balance, and I don't know that you're ever going to achieve that. I think work and life are too closely entwined for you to ever really separate the two successfully.
Oh, I think you absolutely. I use the phrase a work-life blend rather than balance.
Yeah.
a subtle difference, and if you're going to ask me to explain it, I probably can't, but it just feels like a better description than balance, because you're quite right, and particularly these days when you walk around with a device in your pocket, and
Absolutely.
we're both sitting here now looking at computer screens and
phones and
what have you. You don't turn off.
No.
That's just a function of life these days.
It does seem to be, doesn't it? So if we just move into a bit more detail, you've one of the things I'm keen to find out from people is what they would say they're most proud of that they've achieved, either personally or professionally.
There's a lot of things. If I'm looking at projects, I'm a project manager. One of my proudest projects, I've got to say, back in the UK, I used to be involved in building football stadia.
Right.
And probably my proudest moment was the opening game of Middlesbrough Football Club. Built my home stadium in my hometown for my home team.
The Riverside Stadium.
Riverside Stadium, yeah. And that, to be honest,
been there.
That
Good
was,
stadium.
well, 25 years old now. To be honest, that was my first real foray into project management. I'd been a civil engineer and working on sites until that point. The company I was working with at the time, a London-based company, needed a site-based civil engineer for a project regenerating the old Hartlepool docks.
Yep.
And even that project, the Hartlepool docks, I was looking after the civil engineering and the bridges and the roads, but that was all to facilitate a living museum, and we created a Napoleonic seaport from nothing, and I thought, this is pretty cool. This is better than precast concrete beams. And from there, the same company then got the project management gig for Riverside Stadium. I jumped up and down, waving my hand, saying, pick me. So for a number of reasons. One, because it was Riverside Stadium, but that was my first foray into project management, and just that feeling of achievement when you're standing there and there's 28,000, I think, opening day, 28,000 people there, and you thought, this is good.
And the buzz you get from going to a football match anyway.
Absolutely, being paid for that was pretty good. And there's been a number of projects since then, so I love delivering projects. Proud of that, but to be honest, that's a short-lived buzz, that's a short hit. What I'm proud of, to be honest, is surviving 35 years in the industry and having been able to help some people along the way.
Yeah, I think that's something that probably doesn't get as much value given to it as it should. That the people like us, that next year I've been at work for 40 years, and over that time I've learned a lot of things. Learned mostly of what not to do, and I'm really keen to try and pass some of that knowledge on to the next sort of generation of engineers, because I think we run the risk of losing that intellectual property, losing those skills that you've learned over a very long time, because it just goes away with you if you don't try and share it. And I think I've certainly seen in New Zealand that people are very loath to share their intellectual property, their skills, because they're worried that somebody's going to steal them.
I don't think that's necessarily a New Zealand thing. I think
maybe not.
It is. Well, I can only speak for my industry. It's the industry I've worked within, but it is an industry thing, and it is kind of understandable that people put a fence around themselves. I've spent 20 years building this knowledge, and this is me. I don't subscribe to that, and one of the values on my website, Team Projects NZ, teamprojects.nz, selfless plug, is share your knowledge. Don't hide your knowledge. Share your knowledge. Everybody in the team has got something to offer. It's communication. We all work in a communication industry. Don't work in engineering.
No,
that's a sideline. Engineering is a side hustle to what we do. It's a communication business. If you can communicate and share information, share knowledge, and help other people to share knowledge, that's the route to success. Whether that's engineering, whether that's a football team, whether that's your social life,
whatever it may be,
whatever field you work in.
I think that is absolutely key. The communication side of what we do is absolutely essential. We're basically taking an idea from a client and converting it into an idea of our own that we then transmit on to somebody else who has to build it. And if the communication isn't clear, what the client wants, what you interpret what the client wants into, and what the contractor then interprets it into, can be very different things from anybody's expectations.
Absolutely.
And that communication skill set, I don't think is emphasised enough in the training for engineers in particular. I think there's a lot of focus on the technical side of what we do, but very little focus on how to communicate.
You need the technical side, but you need the toolbox. You need the hard tools, you need the soft tools. But then anybody can walk into Bunnings and buy the best toolbox on the shelf. It doesn't make you a tradesman.
No, that is very true.
But equally, you can't build without good tools. You can have a shonky old hammer and a bent screwdriver, and you might be able to knock together a shelving unit. But you'll never be that tradesman. But
yeah.
It is that combination of hard skills and soft skills that makes an effective
person.
Effective person.
Yes.
And again, it's not just our industry that works. It's applicable to
many industries. Yeah.
To many industries.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's good. What about your home life? What's your home life like? Because you've got a life sentence block. I think you describe it as.
I'd love to say we're empty nesters, but it couldn't be further from the truth. So my daughter's in Wellington.
Yeah.
Now, my son's no longer with us.
Yeah.
But we're not quite empty nesters because I've got 10 acres full of horses and donkeys and dogs and cats and pigs and cattle and you name it. But it's great fun. That's how
you de-stress.
Yeah, that's how I de-stress. Yeah, absolutely love it.
Yeah. I must admit, I don't really like that idea myself. My daughter's got a horse, and going up and doing the clearing the paddock for that once a day is enough, to be honest with you. That's enough shit that I don't want to shovel that much shit. She had a job recently where she was doing some like work experience at a stud farm, and she was mucking out for 20 horses every day, 6 days a week. That's a hell of a lot of crap.
If you talk to my wife, that's what she used to do when she was a kid, when they didn't have a lot of spare money, and she would.
I did the same. I worked at stables.
Yeah, shovel it down. That was her way of earning her horse riding lessons.
Same as me. Yeah, I did that for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah,
just go up to the stables, muck out all the horses, tack them all up, and then get everybody else have their lessons, and at the end get my own.
There's a little bit more to having a lifestyle, but than just shoveling shit.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. Would you want to go into a bit more detail?
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But
what do you do with the animals that you've got on your livestock block? What are they actually? What's their purpose? What do they do? Are they providing you with milk and eggs?
They are a mix of paddock ornaments.
Yeah.
We home farm.
Yeah.
We raise meat.
Yeah.
And I know where it's been. They have a damn good life, and then a very quick dispatch.
Yeah.
We know where it's all been. We grow our own vegetables, we grow our own meat.
Yeah.
But we've also got lots of pets. I can't hide the fact that my donkey's not there to go on the barbecue. My donkey's there because he's my mate.
Donkeys do seem to have very different personalities to horses, actually, don't they?
Absolutely, he does. Murphy. It was a Christmas present. Most people get chocolates for Christmas. I got a donkey.
You got a donkey.
I got a 6-month-old donkey. He's 16 years old now, so he's and I do. I do go stand in the field. I talk to him and tell him all sorts of things I don't tell anybody else. And he
doesn't give you any lip.
Well, he gives me a bit of lip, yeah.
So other than the lifestyle block, is there anything else you do to get out of work and recharge your batteries?
Yeah. I do a bit of writing in my spare time. I do a bit of painting when I get the chance.
Right. What sort of things are you writing?
Well, I've got 2 half-written novels. Everybody's got a half-written novel somewhere, even if it's not.
Mine's in my
head. Still in your head. But I write a few, just opinion pieces and articles, and some professional and some just for me.
Yeah.
It's just I've always enjoyed writing it. And looping back to the first question, would I do something else? Perhaps I'd go into more of a writing, not necessarily journalism, but I enjoy writing, and I'm not a bad writer.
Yeah,
I've got to say. So maybe that could have been a direction, something more creative. Yeah. I don't like to get the paints out every now and again, do watercolours, and just having a dabble with oils as well at the moment.
Well, because I'm not an artist at all, but I do like photography, and that's something that I want to do more of. I want to do more photography and do it properly, because there's lots of people with their phones taking shit photos. But But you've got to make the time. You've got to do it. You've got to make the time to do it. It's easy just to go home and slob in front of the TV and watch Netflix. And way too easy. Especially with Netflix streaming everything and watching 15 episodes a night. It's dangerous. But I think that's right. You've got to make the time to get out of work and do something that you enjoy doing that isn't work related.
Absolutely.
Because you do spend, certainly in this industry and in others, you spend a lot of time doing this job. And if you don't have something outside of the work, then there's not really a lot to you.
Work-life blend, as we said.
Work-life blend again. Yeah, absolutely, that's true. Is it, in terms of your challenges you've had, what would you say is the biggest challenges you've had in your professional life, particularly?
Not being a very good engineer.
Circling back to where you started from.
Circling back. Look, I got to a point where I was a qualified civil engineer, and I didn't. It's not that I didn't enjoy it, but I thought, well, I don't want to do this for another 40 years.
Yeah.
And the biggest challenge is having the courage to do something different.
Yeah.
And whether that's the courage to slightly change your direction in your career. And okay, project management, civil engineering, it's the same field. If I'd had real courage, I'd have given it all up and
tried something else.
Joined the circus, become a writer. You know?
Yeah.
So there's always a challenge of going so far down a path and thinking, well, I've made my bed now, and this is
kind of committed to it. Yeah.
Committed to it.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky in that I was able to transition into a field of work that I do really enjoy.
Yeah.
And again, some people probably disagree, but I think I'm not bad at it. Being a project manager,
No,
I could probably make a list of people that don't quite agree. But
there's always going to be people that don't like the way you do things. That doesn't mean that they're right or you're
absolutely,
wrong.
Absolutely.
So it's always horses for courses, as they say. But another question, I guess, really is you're obviously not from New Zealand. So
you picked that, eh?
Yeah. Well, the accent's a little bit different to the Kiwi accent I'm used to. I'm also obviously not from New Zealand. But what actually brought you out to New Zealand in the first place?
We never even been here before. So we're 1994, 95. We'd been married probably 5-6 years, and got an opportunity to go to Hong Kong. And we went there for 2 years and stayed for 4.5. And once you got the bug and been away once, it's the bug's there, and that again gave us the courage just to try something different.
Yeah.
Now, I'd been to Hong Kong when I was 21 years old. I was in the Royal Navy Reserves for a lot of years.
We'll have to circle back to that one.
Circle back to that one, but at 21 years old, my friends were all at university having arguments in the flat about whose turn it was to do the dishes, and I was on the border of China and Hong Kong,
waiting for the transition of power
with the Gurkhas and a rifle over my shoulder. So seeing something completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and having seen something different, you get that hankering. Absolutely. So I came back. I'd been, of course, with my now wife Diane, probably for about 6 weeks, and I said, right, I'm off to Hong Kong for a few months. And much to my surprise, she was still there when I came home. Still there now. And I said, I'll take you there one day. And sure enough, 1994, off we went to Hong Kong and had an absolutely fantastic time. The kids were 4 and 2, which a lot of people said, what on earth are you doing taking kids overseas, particularly to...
Well, that age, they love it. They absolutely love it. They're not embedded in a school. They've not really got any close friends. So
widened their horizons so much. And it made them a plus unit as well. Yeah. So we did 4.5 years in Hong Kong, went back to UK, and I had a great time back in UK as well.
Yeah.
And then just the opportunity came up.
Yeah.
We decided that we wanted to go and have another adventure and come back to those decision points.
Yeah.
If Australia had come up first, we'd have gone to Oz. If Canada had come up, gone to Canada.
Yeah.
We talked about going back to Hong Kong and decide, well, actually, you can never go back.
No,
you can't go back and capture it, because what made it so special then has kind of changed.
Different. And it's different circumstances.
Absolutely, different. And New Zealand came up as an opportunity. Yeah. We moved out here, moved to Auckland, spent several years in Auckland.
Yeah.
Then opportunity came to move to South Island in Christchurch, which we did just before the big earthquakes. So it wasn't a function of the earthquakes. We literally moved down in April 2010. I started commuting down here. Then September 2010 was the first biggie. And we'd made the decision to move permanently in October, and then of course February hit, and that was the start of a whole new adventure, particularly in our field, engineering field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just looking back at my journey. I'd been in the UK, worked in the UK most of my working career, and I got to the age of 40 and was discussing with Chrissy, my wife, what was next, because I felt like I hadn't really done everything I wanted to do at that point. So I made the call to sort of inquire about working overseas, which is something that's always been in the back of my mind but never quite been brave enough to do. And I got the opportunity to go and work for WSP in the Middle East, and I'm really glad I took it, because whilst it wasn't a fantastic experience because of me landing in Dubai at the same time as the GFC, the actual projects that I was involved with while I was over there were amazing projects. And, I think if I hadn't done that, I would regret it. But like yourself, once I'd done that, then coming back to the UK, I thought, oh, well, I don't want to stay here now because I've seen other things.
Yeah.
And we'd always talked, Chrissy is a Kiwi, she comes from Wellington originally, and we'd always talked about coming back here. So getting the opportunity to come here and work over here, which we did in December 2010, it seemed like a good opportunity for us to get back over here, see some of Chrissy's family, and sort of get the kids to see the other side of their family, really, which isn't quite how things worked out, but excuse me.
Both coffee.
Right, that'll get edited out.
Edited out.
Yeah, okay. Good to clear your throat some more. You're all right to carry on?
Excuse me. That's it.
Some water there if you need it. Sorry about that. So in terms of things that you want to do, is there something that really impacted on your view of the world that would actually change the way you looked at things around you?
There's the micro and the macro. When you're talking micro and that's at work, 25 years ago, 35 years ago, dear me, 35 years ago when I first started, the construction industry in UK was quite aggressive, quite confrontational. It was just lots of table banging and
shouting.
Yeah. And I just accepted that that's how it was for quite a while, and then eventually just thought, really, is this how to do it? And then I came across a guy whose approach to things was completely different. He was a communicator, and he'd listen to the shouting, and he'd say, okay, right, and he'd drill down and actually find out what the real issues were and solve problems diplomatically. And I thought, yeah, that's how we should be doing things.
Yeah.
And that did change my attitude and my approach to work.
Yeah.
And since then, tried to apply that through my career. There's times when you need to bang the table. There's times when you do lose it and shout a bit. But overall, if you can find a diplomatic way to approach things, it's far more productive than
it's a lot more effective. Yeah. I mean, the number of times I've been in meetings where everybody's retreating to their corners and defending themselves rather than dealing with the issue, they're trying to blame somebody else. Nobody wins in that situation. I think you all end up with egg on your face to some extent. Yeah. You're all of you get a dim view or have a dim view of you from the client side, because they're looking at you fighting with one another. And I think you're right, the collaboration side of things, which is, everyone talks about collaboration, but it doesn't happen as often and as well as it should, I don't think, in our industry.
It doesn't, Steve. I've been in business now for 6 years, and I've had people say to me, so who are your main competitors? And I always say, genuinely, I don't have competitors. I have lots of other people working in the same field as me.
Yeah.
And if they're the better people for the particular job, they'll get it. And likewise, so will I. I don't see any benefit or any gain in just going head to head
with people. No.
With people, yes.
There are a few out there in that do that. But,
of course there are.
But I think a lot of the time that comes from a place of insecurity, that they're lacking a bit of confidence in themselves, so they try and batter somebody else to make themselves feel better sometimes. Potentially. I mean, there's different personalities and different styles, and look, I won't pretend that on occasion I've been accused of being too assertive, I use the word too aggressive when I'm trying to get a point across, and those times I step back and think, look, I'm stepping over the line. Yeah. That's personality. That's life as well. I think sometimes I think the other thing that comes out of that is everyone has a limit. Everyone gets to a point where they can't deal with anything else anymore. And I know myself that I've had a couple of occasions where I've got to a point where I've had to just leave the room, because if I didn't, I'd end up screaming and shouting and losing my cool, and nobody wins. So I think the important thing is to recognise when you've got to that point and try and diffuse it inside yourself if you can.
It is, Steve, but it's also to understand when other people have got to that point. Because looping back, there's lots of callbacks in this, which is really good, because it means you can't edit out anything that I'm saying. So if you've got somebody who is being particularly aggressive or blunt or over emotional, there's a reason behind that as well. And as we said, we see each other's game face. We see each other's work face.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
No. That's right.
We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And you've got to appreciate that most people, if they're acting away, it's for a reason. And it might be insecurity. It might be that their home life is falling apart. It might be that they just had a home tragedy, or the dog's died, or whatever.
Yeah.
And recognising that and trying to understand it and step through it, again, is far more effective than just taking it head on or saying, "Oh, that guy's not."
Absolutely, yeah. And I do think that's something we could all be better at. To be honest, I think there's times when we should reach out and just ask somebody if they're okay, rather than just ignoring it because you don't want to deal with the issue. And I think that the more that we all do that, the better a world we're going to be living in, I think. But I'd like to circle back to something else. You mentioned very briefly that you were in the Royal Navy Reserves. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What got you interested in being in the Royal Navy?
No, official secrets. Next. I was 14 years. Got in through my family connections. My father was commanding officer of the local units.
Right.
He'd actually retired just before I joined. My brother was in before me as well.
Yeah.
It was still my decision.
Yeah.
And I had an absolute ball. I was a radio operator. We had a fleet of minesweepers around UK, and I used to go off every weekend I could.
Wow.
Yeah. 4 nights out in the Mediterranean, up in the Arctic Circle. Went across to Portugal. Went to Hong Kong, as I said.
Yeah.
Had an absolute blast for 14 years.
What rank did you leave at?
I was a petty officer. I was purposely didn't take a commission because I was having far too much fun below decks. Because I was a petty officer, a radio supervisor, or petty officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. 14 years. So what age did you go in?
Went in at 16.
At 16.
Yeah. And I left just before I went to Hong Kong. To be honest, leaving the country was a reason for.
Well, you've been outside the country for quite a long time, by the sound of it. On ships, but never really anywhere else.
Indeed. Yeah.
Let's not talk about what was happening in the ports. Okay, I think one question I kind of not sure whether this is a good question or not, but it's one that I keep coming back to. Is what if there was one piece of advice that you could give to your 20-year-old self that would maybe change the future for your 20-year-old self? What would that be?
Well, there's a couple actually. So the first piece of advice was actually given to me at 20, so it's a bit of a cheat. So this is repeating some advice that was given to me, and it was from a boss who became a very dear friend and still is. And he took me to one side after a particular meeting during the time when it was still banging the table and shouting, and that was the way he did things. And he took me aside. He said, "Whenever you're with a group of people, whether it's work, whether it's social, whether it's sports teams or whatever," he said, "There's always one arsehole. My advice to you is work out who that is as soon as you can, because if you can't spot them, it's probably you." and over the years, there have been many occasions since then. I've been in a meeting, I'm looking around, I'm talking, I'm looking around, I go, it's me again. That moment of self-awareness is a cue to actually stop and shut up and come back. So that's a bit of a glib one, but the advice, well, again, it's advice I would give to myself, but I did it, is don't be afraid to try something different.
Yeah. Don't
be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. Don't be scared to be scared. No. Doing something new is scary.
Absolutely.
And that kind of loops back into the writing thing. There's an article that I wrote, as an opinion piece that I wrote, but didn't really publish it. I think it's up on my website somewhere, but it's called Stepping Stones. And one thing I've said in there is that our life journeys likened to stepping stones, and I'm reading from it now. Yeah.
Yep.
Our life journeys likened to stepping stones. We can elect to carefully pick out small steps across smooth flowing waters, or for ginger stretches across rapid moving white water. Sometimes we take the safe and clear route, and sometimes maybe you need to take a leap of faith from one slippery place to another. The thing is just to take that step, because if you stay by the riverbank, you'll never know what's on the other side.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I was saying there is, if you sit forever by the side of stagnant water, it just invites the slow permeation of its taste and its odour.
Yep.
You can become stagnant.
Yep.
And if you elect not to move, and you see that with people who are in the same job and same position, done the same thing for 40 years,
Well,
This stagnates into what it
that
does.
that sort of early comment when your parents say, "Oh, you're working for the Cleveland Council, or you've got a job for life," I think that's a really bad move.
But back in the day, that was
Back in the day,
back
that's
in
what
the
you
day,
did.
that was
That's what you did. But I think similar to you, I think if I was going to give myself some advice, and I pretty much have followed it as well, is don't actually dismiss an opportunity. If there's an opportunity that comes your way, even if you don't know whether it's a good one or not, don't dismiss it out of hand.
Absolutely.
Have a look at it. Have a real think about it, because sometimes those opportunities open doors that you would not otherwise open.
And not every step needs to be a big step forwards.
No, actually, sometimes
step
a sideways step is actually a
step
lot of
backwards
progress.
to go back to. Just absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would summarise that as there's no shame in regretting the things that you've done. The advice, I'll go back to your question, the advice I give myself is don't ever get to old age and regret the things that you didn't do.
Yeah,
By
absolutely.
all means, get there, regret it, look back and that was a bit dodgy, but don't
but
regret what you didn't
I
do,
think
because that's life. That's
That's
the thing.
life. Exactly. Life is about experiences, and someone I know it's not actually 100% true, but somebody said to me, I can't remember who it was now, that there's no such thing as good and bad experiences. There's just experiences, and whether they're good or bad depends on how you approach them. And I think to some extent that's true. There are certain things where you say, no, that's definitely a bad experience. No matter which way you look at it, that's a bad experience.
Without any shadow of a doubt.
But a lot of the time, when you feel like you've had something at work that's not gone your way, there's a lesson there. It's why didn't it go your way? How did you approach that situation? What could you have done differently that would have meant that you got the outcome that you were looking for? And that's where I think that applies. But other stuff, there's things that happen to people that you say, no, that's definitely bad.
Oh, there's definitely bad experiences.
There's no
Definitely good experiences. There's definitely bad experiences.
And,
That's just called life, Steve.
Yeah,
That's,
it is,
that's
absolutely. And it's a series of events that happen to you, and some of those events you've got control over, and some of those events you haven't. And it's really up to you to do what you can to take the most out of every one of them. And
to quote John Lennon in his song called Beautiful Boy, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans.
Absolutely.
And
that's very true.
And that resonates. And
So touching back on that sort of piece of advice, looking back on your 35 years, is there a decision in that career that you've regretted making since you've made it, or do you is that something that you don't do, really? You don't reflect on that?
Reflection and regrets are different things. Mm-hmm. That I wouldn't say there's a specific decision that I regret. Stepping outside your comfort zone. So when I went to Cleveland County Council, I took that, I'll be honest, as the kind of safe option. I had the option of going to Cardiff University, 400 miles away, doing naval architecture, and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today, and I wouldn't have met my wife, and I wouldn't have my kids. So that I don't regret things. You look back and you reflect and you think, well, maybe I could have done things differently.
Yeah.
But regrets don't help.
No, that's true. That sort of is a circular journey into yourself that doesn't do anyone any good, I think. Okay, look, I'm quite happy to carry on for a little bit longer if you've got some time. There's a couple of other questions that I did put down that I would like to ask you. First one would be, who would you say was the biggest influence on your life, and why are they?
That's too numerous to mention. Really? I think that there were a couple of really special friends. The guy that took me aside and told me not to be an asshole.
Yep. You need people like that in your life.
Look, friends and family is it's a bit of a twee answer, but I wouldn't say there's any one person that stands out. It's learning from everybody that you meet.
Let me change that question very slightly then. Is there somebody that is on your bucket list of people you'd love to meet?
Well, probably most of the rock stars. I'm a bit of a metalhead at heart, so yeah.
Okay. So you'd like to spend some time as a groupie?
Spend some time as a groupie, yeah. Right, maybe more of a roadie than a groupie, but yeah, I think they're subtly different things.
They are subtly different things, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other question I sort of got down here is there one place that you haven't been to that you really want to go to?
Africa on safari, and hopefully that's going to happen in the next few years. We've got some intensive plans.
Any particular parts of Africa?
Well, we've got friends who, a friend who's a game warden and knows all the places.
Yeah.
Off the beaten track, and
nice.
we kind of put ourselves in her hands and say, right,
take us on a trip.
Take us on a trip for 3 weeks.
That
would be fantastic.
Have you ever been to Africa?
No, it's one of the continents we've not been to. We've travelled all around Southeast Asia, where we lived in Hong Kong. We've travelled this side of the world. We've travelled Europe. So it's one continent we haven't.
Yeah, I've been to parts of Africa, so I've been to sort of the northern edge of it, Egypt and places like that. But the larger part of the continent I've never been to, and I do like the idea of getting in there sometime and doing the safaris myself. Actually, but there's so much of the world that I haven't seen.
That was a huge place.
It is, and I think that people that don't want to travel are missing out on a huge part of the experience, and it's all about experience. At the end
it
of the
is
day,
about experience. Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. I don't have any more questions. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
Well, we could get into the heavy stuff if you really want to.
Oh, well, I'm quite happy to if you want to.
Yeah, so you can edit this as you wish.
Okay.
We've avoided talking about my son, about Jamie.
Yeah.
I don't want to avoid talking about Jamie.
Okay.
So, asked me earlier on about family.
Yeah.
Our daughter Katie's in Wellington. Very proud of her. Working at Massey University.
With Katie.
Yeah, and my son tragically died in a road accident when he was 20 years old, and that's 9 years ago now.
Yeah.
And if you're asking about your things that change your perspective on life and completely change the way you are, absolutely, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Do I have any regrets? Every day of the week, regret not spending more time with him.
Yeah.
Regret not being able to do something to make it not happen.
Yeah.
But it's been 9 years, and one thing I do want to talk about, and it makes the cut. It's up to you, Steve.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, is how men deal with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Of course, we crap at it, and
we are. Yes.
Yeah, it's a generalisation, but men and women do deal with these things differently and grieve differently, and our default is just to bury ourselves in work and put your head down and pretend it hasn't happened and
hope it goes away.
Hope it goes away, and it doesn't, and all it does is it festers.
Yeah.
And it did with me, and I was with a different consultancy at the time, and I look back and I was horrible. And the people that were there when it all happened kind of had some sympathy. In the year afterwards, you have new people coming in who have heard about it and have some sympathy, and after 2 years, people have moved on and don't really care, and that's fine, and that's absolutely fine, because that's how it has to be.
Yep.
But dealing with a major event or a trauma or a grief, it's, you said earlier on, we should ask people how they are when people are reacting is probably for a certain reason, and I can say from experience that I went into a complete black spiral that would have been very, very, very easy not to come out of it well.
Thank you very much for touching on that subject, because I think it is something that does need to be discussed more openly. Not the details of everything, but the fact that people go through these things and learning lessons from that process. The grieving process is very difficult. For myself, we when Christian and I first got married, we lost our first baby, and that was a horrendous experience. And I really struggled with that, dealing with that myself, and I think it's for the same reason that I didn't know how to deal with it. I'd not had any kind of role models to understand how I was supposed to express the feelings that I was feeling, and not having that outlet was really difficult. But it's nothing like, I guess somebody told me recently that a lot of the issue when you lose a baby, as we did, is that you're losing the potential for that child. All of the things they could have been is gone. And I think for you with your son, it's probably even more focused, because you've seen how he's been for the first 20 years, and you can see kind of the path he's on, and then suddenly that's cut short. There's a huge gap.
It is, Steve, but the flip side of that is that I'm so pleased that we did so much.
Yeah. Because you got to travel the world.
We travelled the world,
and
we look back and the things that we did as a family, and the amount he crammed into his 20 years was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Of course, I'd far rather
Still here.
still here in
Yes,
for the
absolutely.
next 14, 50 years. But
Totally understand.
But yeah, I mean that was a hugely influential event
yeah.
on my life, and it does make you take stock of what's important and
Absolutely it does.
recalibrate and
Yeah.
work-life balance and blend. And I had got into that corporate mentality of going to work early and going home late to make up for it, and
Yeah.
and then you get into that. Your day expands by 10 minutes both ends, and suddenly you're working 12 hours a day on Saturdays, and you think you're doing the right thing, and you well, okay, maybe you are, but it's
I think a lot of the time, if you're somebody who's got an ounce of concern about doing a good job, if you're somebody that wants to deliver for your clients and for your employers, then putting that extra time in just comes naturally.
It does, but it's easy to get the balance.
It's very easy to get the balance wrong.
Yeah,
absolutely.
to tip the balance,
Yeah.
and it's only when you have a major event like that. I think, if only.
Yeah.
If only I'd said no to working that weekend and stayed home and gone to soccer with Jamie or whatever it was going to be.
Yeah. Maybe that wouldn't have happened. Yeah.
Well, not even maybe it wouldn't have happened, but just this time I could have spent with him that I didn't. Yeah. And if you talk about regrets, then that's the regrets I have, that I look back and go, well, yeah.
Okay. I think that's probably a good place for us to conclude our conversation. It's very difficult to follow that, I think. So thank you very much, Paul, for being so open. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm looking forward to working with you again at some point in the future.
Thanks, Steve. Likewise.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my podcast, A Penny for Your Thoughts, with me, Steve Penny. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation, and I look forward to sharing my next conversation with you. If you want to find out some more, please do get in touch, and maybe we can have you on in a future show. Thank you.